Mother breaks down mid-game. What Steve did next left everyone crying. There are things a mother will never tell her children. She will never tell them how many meals she skipped so they could eat. She will never tell them how many nights she stayed awake worrying about bills she could not pay. And she will never tell them how close she came to giving up, because a mother does not give up. She just keeps going, even when every part of her is breaking. But on a Monday afternoon in March 2024, a 44-year-old mother from Houston, Texas, could not keep going anymore. Right in the middle of a Family Feud round, right in the middle of answering a question about something as simple as what makes a house feel like a home, she broke down. She did not just cry. She collapsed into the kind of sobbing that comes from a place so deep it scares the people who hear it. Steve Harvey stopped everything. He walked off his mark. He left his podium, and what he did for the next 15 minutes was not television. It was an act of grace that would change this woman's life and leave 200 people in that studio weeping in their seats. Before we get into this story, hit that like button and subscribe to this channel so you never miss a moment like this one. Trust me, you need to hear every word of what happened on that stage. The Medina family from Houston, Texas walked onto the Family Feud stage looking like a family that had polished itself until it shined. Their matching burgundy shirts were pressed. Their smiles were wide. Their energy was warm and inviting. If you had seen them from the audience, you would have thought they were a family without a care in the world. That was the point. Carmen Medina had spent her entire life making sure her struggles were invisible. She had raised 3 children, buried a husband, survived a foreclosure, and rebuilt her life from the ground up without ever once letting the outside world see the cracks. Today was supposed to be no different. Today was supposed to be fun. Today was supposed to be the one day where none of it mattered. Carmen was 44 years old. She was a home health aide who spent her days caring for elderly patients across the greater Houston area, driving from house to house in a 15-year-old Honda Civic with 230,000 miles on it, bathing people who could not bathe themselves, feeding people who could not feed themselves, and providing companionship to men and women whose own families had stopped visiting. Carmen made $14.50 an hour. She worked 6 days a week. She had no health insurance. And she had not taken a single day off in over 3 years, because a day off meant $60 she could not afford to lose. Carmen's husband, Miguel, had been a construction foreman. He was the kind of man who came home covered in dust and sweat, and still had the energy to throw his kids in the air and cook dinner while Carmen put her feet up for the first time all day. Miguel had been the love of her life, her partner in everything, the man who had crossed the border from Guadalajara at 19 with $200 in his boot and a promise that he would build a life worth living. He kept that promise for 20 years. Then 4 years ago, Miguel was killed in a workplace accident when a crane cable snapped at a construction site in Katy, Texas. He was 43 years old. The company's insurance paid out a settlement that barely covered the funeral costs, and Carmen was left alone with 3 children, a mortgage she could not afford, and a grief so heavy it felt like it would crush her into the ground. Standing next to Carmen was her oldest child, her daughter Sophia, who was 22. Sophia had been a sophomore at the University of Houston when Miguel died. She dropped out the week of the funeral to help support the family, taking a job at a call center that paid $15 an hour and required her to sit in a cubicle for 9 hours a day listening to people complain about their cable service. Sophia never complained about it. She never said a word about the degree she had been working toward in biochemistry, the research lab she had been accepted into, or the professor who had told her she had the potential for a career in pharmaceutical science. She packed all of that away the same way her mother packed away her grief, quietly, completely, and without asking for anyone's sympathy. Next to Sophia was Carmen's middle child, her son Alejandro, who everyone called Alex. He was 19 and worked at a tire shop on the south side of Houston. Alex had been 15 when his father died, and the loss had hit him in ways that the family was still trying to understand. He had been Miguel's shadow, spending weekends at job sites, learning how to read blueprints, and talking about the day he would join his father's crew. When Miguel died, Alex lost not just his father, but his entire vision of who he was going to become. He had dropped out of high school 6 months later, and despite Carmen's pleading, he had refused to go back. He eventually got his GED and found work at the tire shop, where the physical labor gave him a place to put the anger and sadness that he did not know how to express any other way. The 4th member of the team was Carmen's youngest, her daughter Isabella, who was 14 and still in middle school. Isabella was the quiet one, the observer, the child who stood in doorways and listened to conversations she was not supposed to hear. She knew more about the family's financial situation than Carmen realized. She had heard her mother on the phone with the mortgage company. She had seen the past due notices stacked on the kitchen counter. She had watched her mother sit in the driveway after work, hands on the steering wheel, head bowed, for 5 or 10 minutes before coming inside, as if she needed that time to put her mask back on before her children could see her face. Isabella never said anything about what she saw. She just loved her mother harder and quieter and hoped it was enough. The fifth member of the team was Carmen's younger sister, Rosario, who was 39 and worked as a receptionist at a dental office. Rosario was the one who had pushed for the Family Feud appearance. She had seen what the last 4 years had done to her sister, how the light behind Carmen's eyes had dimmed month after month until it was barely there at all. Rosario had applied to the show without telling Carmen, and when they were selected, she presented it as a done deal. "You need one good day, Carmen," Rosario had said. "One day where you are not working, not worrying, not surviving, just living." Carmen had resisted at first, but her children's excitement had convinced her. If they wanted to go, she would go. For them, she would always go. The Medina family was facing off against the Henderson family from Dallas. The Hendersons were a fun, high-energy family that brought great enthusiasm to the stage. Both families greeted each other warmly. Steve Harvey came out and worked the room, shaking hands and cracking jokes. When he reached Carmen, he took her hand and said, "Mrs. Medina, welcome to the show. You ready to play?" Carmen smiled the smile she had perfected over 4 years, the one that showed the world everything was fine. "I am ready, Mr. Harvey. My family is here, and that is all I need." Steve nodded and moved on, reading her answer at face value. He had no idea that the woman standing in front of him was held together by nothing but willpower and the desperate need to not fall apart in front of her children. The game started well. Sophia gave a strong answer in the first round that set the family up with early points. Alex, despite his quiet demeanor, delivered a number 2 answer that made the audience cheer. Rosario contributed a clever response that got a genuine laugh from Steve. Even Isabella, the youngest and most reserved, stepped up to the podium and gave an answer with enough confidence to earn applause and a high five from her mother. Carmen played solidly, giving correct answers without much fanfare. She was steady, reliable, and controlled, the same way she was in every other area of her life. She was keeping it together. The mask was holding. The third round, the Medinas had a comfortable lead over the Hendersons. The mood was light. The family was having a good time. Steve was enjoying their dynamic, particularly the way Isabella would whisper her answer to Carmen before stepping up to the microphone as if she needed her mother's approval before saying anything out loud. "I see who runs this family," Steve joked, pointing at Isabella. "That little one is the real boss." The audience laughed. Carmen laughed. Everything was going according to plan. Then Steve read the question for the fourth round. "We surveyed 100 people. Name something that makes a house feel like a home." It was the kind of question that Family Feud asked all the time. It was warm, it was safe, and it was designed to produce answers that everyone could relate to. Family, cooking, pets, furniture, love, any of those would have been perfectly good answers. It was Carmen's turn at the podium for the face-off. Steve repeated the question. "Something that makes a house feel like a home." Carmen opened her mouth to answer, and nothing came out. She stood there, her lips parted, her eyes fixed on some middle distance that was not the board, not Steve, not the audience. She was somewhere else. She was standing in the doorway of the house on Cullen Boulevard that the bank had taken from her 2 years after Miguel died. She was standing in the kitchen where Miguel used to cook a roast con pollo on Saturday afternoons while the kids did homework at the table. She was standing in the hallway where she had measured her children's heights against the doorframe every year on their birthdays, pencil marks climbing up the wood like a record of everything beautiful she had ever built. The silence stretched on. 3 seconds, 5 seconds, 7 seconds. The audience shifted uncomfortably. Steve tilted his head slightly, his expression shifting from expectant to concerned. Sophia took a step forward behind the podium, sensing something was wrong. Alex's jaw tightened. Isabella gripped Rosario's hand. Then Carmen whispered almost to herself, "My husband." The answer was so quiet that Steve had to lean in. "I am sorry, what was that?" Carmen looked at Steve, and in that moment the mask cracked, not slowly, not gracefully. It shattered. Her face crumpled, and a sound came out of her that made every person in that studio flinch. It was not a cry. It was not a sob. It was a wail, a raw, guttural release of 4 years of grief and exhaustion and loneliness that she had been holding in a sealed container somewhere deep inside herself, and the container had just exploded. "My husband made it a home," Carmen said through her tears, but the words were barely intelligible. "My husband made everything a home. He made the car a home. He made a 1-bedroom apartment a home. He made every place we ever lived feel safe and warm because he was there. And now he is gone. And nothing feels like home anymore. Nothing. I cannot do this anymore. I cannot keep pretending everything is fine. She dropped to her knees right there at the podium. Her hands went flat against the stage floor, and she bent forward until her forehead was nearly touching the ground, and she cried with the kind of force that made her entire body shake. It was the breakdown that had been coming for 4 years, and it was happening on national television in front of 200 strangers and 3 children who had never seen their mother like this. Sophia was at her side in an instant, dropping to the floor and wrapping her arms around her mother. "Mama, it is okay. We are here. It is okay." Alex stood frozen for a moment, the muscles in his neck taut, his eyes wet, and then he moved. He walked to his mother and kneeled down next to Sophia, placing his hand on Carmen's back without saying a word, because Alex had never had the words and he knew it, but his hand on her back said everything. Isabella was crying silently, pressing herself against Rosario, who had her arms wrapped tight around her niece and was whispering in Spanish, prayers, or comfort, or both. Steve Harvey had stopped. He was not performing. He was not hosting. He was standing 3 feet from a woman who was falling apart on his stage, and the expression on his face was not the studied empathy of a television professional. It was the raw, unguarded look of a man watching something that he recognized, something that he understood, something that had hit him in a place he had not expected to be hit on a Monday afternoon taping of a game show. Steve set his card down on the podium. He did not look at the producers. He did not look at the cameras. He walked around the podium, walked past the board, and walked to where Carmen was kneeling on the floor with her children around her. And he sat down. Right there on the Family Feud stage, Steve Harvey sat down on the floor with this family, crossed his legs, and waited. He did not try to pull her up. He did not try to rush her through it. He did not try to fix it. He just sat there and let her break, because sometimes the most powerful thing you can do for someone who is falling apart is to sit on the ground next to them and let them know they do not have to stand up until they are ready. For almost 2 full minutes, nobody spoke. The only sounds in the studio were Carmen's sobs, Sophia's whispered reassurances, and the quiet murmur of an audience that was collectively holding back its own tears. Steve sat on the floor with the Medina family, his hands folded in his lap, his head slightly bowed. He gave them the time they needed. He gave Carmen the space to feel what she had been refusing to feel for 4 years. And when her sobs finally began to slow, when her breathing started to steady, when she lifted her head and looked around with the dazed expression of someone emerging from deep water, Steve spoke. "Carmen," he said softly, "look at me." Carmen turned to him. Her makeup was ruined. Her eyes were swollen. Her burgundy shirt was wrinkled from where she had been bent over on the floor. She looked nothing like the composed, polished woman who had walked onto the stage an hour earlier. She looked like who she actually was. A tired, grieving, overburdened mother who had been carrying too much for too long and had finally run out of the strength to pretend otherwise. "I see you," Steve said. "I see what you have been doing. Working 2 shifts of other people's pain and coming home to carry your own. Driving that car held together by prayers and duct tape. Keeping a smile on your face so your children would not worry. Saying you are fine when you are drowning. I see all of it, Carmen, and I want you to know something." He paused. "You do not have to be strong right now. You do not have to be strong for your kids. You do not have to be strong for this audience. You do not have to be strong for anybody. Because being strong is what has been killing you, and your family does not need you to be strong. They need you to be honest. They need you to let them carry some of it." Carmen looked at her children. Sophia was crying but nodding fiercely. Alex, who had not spoken during the entire game, finally opened his mouth. "Mama, I dropped out of school because I thought I needed to be like Dad. I thought if I worked with my hands, I could fill the space he left. But I should have been helping you. I should have seen how hard you were working. I am sorry, Mama. I am so sorry I did not see it." Carmen reached out and grabbed Alex's hand. "Mijo, you do not apologize to me. You never apologized to me. You are exactly who your father hoped you would be. You work hard. You show up. You are kind. That is your father living through you, and it is the most beautiful thing I have ever seen." Isabella stepped forward. The 14-year-old who never said anything, who observed everything from doorways and listened to conversations through walls, spoke for the first time. "Mama, I know about the bills. I know about the mortgage. I know you sit in the car every night before you come inside. I know because I watch you from my window." Carmen's face crumpled again, but Isabella was not finished. "I watch you because I want to make sure you come inside. I'm afraid that one night you will be too tired to come inside. So I watch you every night." The audience was destroyed. People were openly weeping, holding each other, covering their faces. The Henderson family was standing on their side of the stage in tears. Martha Henderson, their family captain, had her hand over her heart and was shaking her head slowly, the way you do when you are witnessing something that is too real and too painful and too beautiful to process. Steve Harvey was crying. He was not wiping the tears away. He was not trying to compose himself for the cameras. He was sitting on the floor of his own show, crying, because a 14-year-old girl had just said she watched her mother from a window every night to make sure she came inside, and that single image contained more truth about poverty and grief and the invisible weight of motherhood than any speech he had ever given. Steve stood up slowly and offered his hand to Carmen. She took it, and he helped her to her feet. Her children stood with her, surrounding her the way they always had, but differently now. Not as a family keeping up appearances, as a family that had finally stopped pretending. Steve turned to the audience and the cameras. His voice was thick and unsteady, but the words were clear. I want to say something to every mother watching this right now. I know you are tired. I know you are doing things that nobody sees and nobody thanks you for. I know you are skipping meals and losing sleep and carrying burdens that would break most people. And I know you are telling everyone you are fine when you are anything but fine. He paused. You do not have to be fine. You are allowed to break. You are allowed to ask for help. And if nobody has told you this today, I am telling you right now, you are enough, not because of what you do, because of who you are. The audience gave a standing ovation that felt less like applause and more like a collective exhale, 200 people releasing something they had been holding without knowing it. Then Steve made his move. The Medina family came here to play a game, and they are going to win that game because I said so, and it is my show. The audience laughed through their tears. But I am also going to do something else. Steve announced that his foundation would be paying off the remaining balance on Carmen's car, so she would not have to worry about the vehicle she depended on for her livelihood. He announced that the show would connect Carmen with a financial counselor to help her restructure her debts and get on stable ground. And he announced that he was personally setting up an education fund for all three of Carmen's children, because, as he put it, Sophia did not drop out of college because she wanted to. She dropped out because she had to, and that ends today. Sophia burst into tears. She looked at her mother, and the two women embraced in a way that told the entire story of the last 4 years without a single word. Alex put his arms around both of them. Isabella joined. Rosario completed the circle, and for the second time that day, the Medina family held each other on the Family Feud stage, but this time it was different. This time, the weight was distributed. This time, nobody was carrying it alone. The Medina family finished the game and won. They played fast money and took home $20,000. Carmen and Sophia combined for 189 points, and when the final score was revealed, Carmen did not jump or scream. She closed her eyes, pressed her hands together, and whispered, "Thank you, Miguel." It was the quietest celebration in fast money history, and it was the most powerful. When the episode aired 5 weeks later, the clip of Carmen's breakdown and everything that followed was viewed over 60 million times in the first week. It became the most shared Family Feud clip of that season and one of the most viral moments in the show's history. But the numbers were just the surface. Underneath them was something that statistics could not capture. The clip had reached the mothers. The tired, overworked, underpaid, invisible mothers who saw themselves in Carmen Medina and who, for the first time, felt like someone on television was telling their story. The response was overwhelming. Mothers across the country posted videos of themselves watching the clip and crying. They wrote messages describing their own hidden struggles, the meals they skipped, the bills they juggled, the smiles they faked for their children. A hashtag emerged organically on social media. "I see you, mama," that was used over 3 million times in the first month. Women shared their stories under that hashtag, and the collective outpouring of honesty created a kind of digital support network that therapists and social workers later described as one of the most significant grassroots mental health movements they had ever seen. Isabella's revelation about watching her mother from the window every night struck a particular chord. Child psychologists began referencing the moment in articles and presentations about parentification, the phenomenon of children taking on emotional caretaking roles that they are not developmentally equipped to handle. Isabella's words, delivered with the simple directness of a 14-year-old who did not realize she was describing something clinically significant, became a touchstone for conversations about the hidden toll that financial hardship takes on children. Schools in several states incorporated the clip into guidance counselor training programs, using it to help educators recognize the signs of children who were silently monitoring their parents' well-being. Steve Harvey featured the Medina family on his talk show 2 months after the episode aired. Carmen walked onto the set looking like a woman who had set down a heavy bag after carrying it for miles. She was not transformed. She was not magically healed. She was still tired. She still worked hard. She still missed Miguel every single day. But there was a lightness about her that had not been there on the Family Feud stage. a softness in her posture that suggested she was no longer bracing herself against the world. Carmen told Steve that the night after the taping, she sat her children down at the kitchen table and told them everything, the full financial picture, the debts, the late notices, the months she had gone without eating lunch so she could put gas in the car. She said it was the hardest conversation she had ever had and also the most freeing. For 4 years, I thought I was protecting them by hiding it, Carmen said, but I was not protecting them. I was isolating myself. I was turning myself into an island and drowning in the middle of it. When I finally told them the truth, they did not fall apart. They stepped up. Every single one of them stepped up. Sophia Ray enrolled at the University of Houston. The education fund that Steve had set up covered her tuition, and her former professor, who had seen the Family Feud episode and recognized Sophia from 3 years earlier, reached out and offered her a spot back in the research lab. Sophia later told a reporter that walking back onto that campus was the first time since her father's death that she felt like herself. I had put my dreams in a box and sealed it shut because my family needed me. Steve Harvey and Family Feud gave me permission to open it again. Alex went back to school. Not traditional school, but a vocational training program for construction management that was offered through a partnership between his tire shop and a local community college. The program would certify him to be a construction foreman, the same job his father had held. When Carmen found out what Alex had enrolled in, she sat in her car in the driveway and cried the way she used to, except this time, when she looked up, Isabella was not watching her from the window. Isabella was sitting in the passenger seat next to her, holding her hand. Isabella started seeing a school counselor, something Carmen had not known her daughter needed until the Family Feud episode forced the family's private struggles into the open. The counselor helped Isabella understand that watching over her mother from the window was not something a 14-year-old should have to do, and that the anxiety she felt every night until Carmen came inside was a weight that she deserved help carrying. Isabella later wrote a school essay about the experience that her English teacher submitted to a statewide writing contest. It won first place. The essay was titled "The Window," and it described what it was like to love someone so much that you could not sleep until you saw them safely through the door. It was read aloud at the awards ceremony, and the auditorium was in tears before she reached the second paragraph. The financial counselor that the show connected Carmen with helped her consolidate her debts and create a realistic budget for the first time in 4 years. The $20,000 from Fast Money went directly toward her most pressing bills, and the car payoff removed a monthly expense that had been strangling her budget. Within 6 months, Carmen was current on every bill for the first time since Miguel's death. She did not celebrate. She just exhaled. That was enough. Rosario, Carmen's sister, started a small nonprofit called Matters Fuertes, which meant Strong Mothers. The organization connected overworked single mothers in the Houston area with financial counseling, mental health resources, and community support networks. Rosario funded the initial operations with her own savings and the donations that flooded in after the Family Feud episode aired. Within a year, Matters Fuertes had served over 400 mothers in the greater Houston area. Carmen volunteered every Saturday, sitting with women who reminded her of herself and telling them the same thing Steve Harvey had told her. You do not have to be fine. You are allowed to break, and you do not have to carry it alone. 1 year after the episode aired, the Medina family returned to Family Feud for a special follow-up segment. They walked onto the stage in matching burgundy shirts, the same color they had worn the first time, but this time the energy was different. Carmen was holding Isabella's hand, not because Isabella was afraid, but because they had decided that was their thing now. They held hands, in the car at the grocery store walking into church. It was their way of saying, I am here and so are you. Steve greeted them with the warmth of a man who had been thinking about this family for a year. He hugged Carmen for a long time, and when he pulled back, he looked at her and said, You look different. Carmen smiled. I sleep now, Mr. Harvey. I actually sleep, Steve nodded. That is the best thing you could have said to me. The update was everything the audience hoped it would be. Sophia was back in school and thriving in her research lab. Alex was 6 months into his construction management program and had been offered a position with a firm upon completion. Isabella had won a writing award and was seeing a counselor who was helping her let go of the weight she had been carrying. Carmen was current on her bills, stable in her job, and no longer sitting in the driveway at night because she no longer needed those 5 minutes to put her mask back on. The mask was gone. Steve turned to the cameras for the final time. A year ago, Carmen Medina broke down on this stage because someone asked her what makes a house feel like a home. Her answer was her husband, and her grief, the grief she had been hiding for 4 years, finally caught up to her. He paused. I have thought about Carmen every single day since that taping. Not because of the drama, not because it went viral, but because she reminded me of something I think we all forget. The strongest people in the world are not the ones who never break. They are the ones who break and get back up. They are the ones who let people see them at their worst and discover that the people who love them do not leave. They stay. They sit on the floor with you, and they wait until you are ready to stand. Carmen spoke last. She looked into the camera and said in the steady, clear voice of a woman who had finally stopped pretending, "Miguel, if you are watching, and I believe you are, the house still does not feel the same without you. It never will. But our children are okay. I am okay. And the home you built, the real home, the one that lives inside all of us, it is still standing. It is still warm, and the door is always open." If this story moved you, please hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss another one. Leave a comment below and tell your mother or someone who has been a mother to you that you see them. Share this video today because there is a Carmen in every neighborhood, in every school parking lot, in every car sitting in every driveway. And she needs to know she is not alone. We will see you in the next one.